Well, apparently I don't even need to use the gavel, but I will just to make it official. I'd like to call this meeting of the UW System Board of Regents to order. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Regent President Walsh.
Here.
Regent Vice President Bogus.
Here.
Regent Adams.
Here.
Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Bechtel. Regent Cologne.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Menedines.
Here.
Regent Miller.
Here.
Regent Posh.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Rye.
Here.
Regent Stein. Regent Tucker.
Here.
Regent Underly.
Here.
Regent Walks.
Here.
Regent Weatherly.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we begin today's meeting, I want to note that as is Board of Regents tradition, we've invited Governor Tony Evers, the 46th governor of Wisconsin, to address the board at this month's meeting following his recent re-election. Is the governor here, Mark? Okay, then we'll move forward. When he comes in, he'll have the floor. As we consider items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's open session? Hearing none, before I begin my report, the records of the November 10th meeting of the Board of Regents, the November 27th special meeting of the Board of Regents, and the November 28th meeting of the board's executive committee have been provided. May I have a motion to approve these records? Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Also, a report from the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has been provided. Are there any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, I do have a brief report on our two chancellor search processes, beginning first with UW-Platteville. Since our last meeting, the position has been posted and the search officially opened on November 11th. The application deadline for assured consideration by the Search and Screen Committee is January 17th. Chaired by Regent Chris Peterson, the Search and Screen Committee members will consider feedback received from the campuses as they prepare to select candidates for semifinalist interviews in the spring. Regent Peterson, is there anything you'd like to say regarding the listening sessions that you've been holding?
I was very pleased to have a whole week down at Platteville and then visiting the branch campuses, and I'm very optimistic for a wonderful process.
Great, thank you. And again, we appreciate everyone at UW-Platteville who participated. Those listening sessions are very valuable to our process. Now, we're going to have semifinalists. One more thing on Platteville. Semifinalist interviews are going to occur in the spring. Now for UW-Whitewater's chancellor search, on-campus visits by the 5 finalist candidates are currently underway. Faculty, staff, students, alumni, and community members will have the opportunity this week and next week to hear from each finalist in open forums. After reviewing campus feedback, President Rothman and the Special Regent Committee that is comprised of Regents Amy Bogus, Ashok Rai, Jill Underly, and Kyle Weatherly, chaired by Regent Bogus, will interview the finalists and recommend a single successful candidate to this board, which must approve the appointment. The person selected through this process will be UW-Whitewater's 18th chancellor. Once again, I'd like to thank my colleagues for their willingness to participate in these searches. It's the most important work that we as regents do. And it's a significant responsibility and a great deal of time, and you're all to be commended. And also the folks on the Whitewater campus who've been helping us through that process as well. Now I'd like to announce that a small group of donors has come together to create 2 new professorships at UW-Madison in honor of Becky Blank, the former chancellor, and Hans Kuttner. These early achievement professorship funds will be awarded to recently tenured faculty who have built an outstanding record in teaching, research, and service. The goal for these and other related fields is to retain emerging star faculty across the campus and provide additional support for scholarship. This is a program that Becky Blank helped develop. So the name funds in honor of Becky and Hans are particularly meaningful. And I'd also like to thank Provost Schultz for his role in helping us bring that to fruition. Thank you very much, Carl. All right, that concludes my report. President Rothman, to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Regional President Walsh. As we have frequently discussed, and as is reflected in our proposed strategic plan that the board will consider later today, the UW system is keenly focused on helping to develop talent for Wisconsin's future. A key component of that is providing greater access to higher education for more people, with the goal of ultimately increasing the number of college graduates in the state. Over the past few months, we have discussed several strategies that could help move us forward on this goal, including direct admissions, which was discussed at the August meeting in Green Bay, and the announced launch of the Wisconsin Tuition Promise Scholarship Program, which targets broadening opportunities for lower income students. In the Education Committee meeting earlier this morning, 2 additional strategies were discussed, and there was a great discussion about both of these. First, credit for prior learning to re-engage new traditional learners, and dual enrollment. While credit for prior learning targets adult learners, dual enrollment provides high school students with the opportunity to take college classes and earn college credit while still in high school. To grow our numbers, we need to consider both populations.
I'm going to stop you there, President Rothman. Governor Evers is in the building. Thank you.
It's good timing. Did I force you off the podium, Jay?
You did, Governor, but that's just fine.
I apologize.
That's my job to push you.
Okay, good. Well, thanks, everybody. I just have a few short comments to make, and obviously, board members, thanks for your service to the state of Wisconsin. And having served on the Board of Regents for 10 years myself, 10 plus years, about 10 and a half years, and now 4 years as governor, I've seen lots of things happen, lots of positive things happen, difficult things. And, you know, one of the things as I was shaking hands, I'm just curious, out of the chancellors, who might have been in your position 14 years ago? Yes, I knew it. I knew it. I'm not surprised. Joe, thank you for doing that for more than 14 years. Anyway, the first thing I want to do is thank you for all your work during the pandemic. Obviously, it was something that our entire state of Wisconsin and our country and our world fought back then and are still fighting today. And I know difficult decisions were made that some people may have been disappointed in, some people were supportive of. But at the end of the day, those following the science, at the end of the day, you saved lives. So you have to think about that, think about it in that context. Obviously, there was political things going on and off, but at the end of the day, if following the science, and Dr. Brian knows these things, how important it is, and you save lives. Of course, there's lots of damage that has been done to mental health of your students, and that has taken a severe blow, and we will be working with you going forward to see what sort of resources are needed to have the students recover fully from that pandemic. And as a board member, I always felt that I must advocate for the system and do what's best for the students. As a former board member, I believe that the board members need autonomy and be free of the whims of politicians. And guarding that independence was a promise I made 4 years ago, and it will continue to be my promise going forward. But while I cherish your independence, I do have a few suggestions for you, and they're just suggestions. But, you know, I know that everyday work is, that you do is to create a workforce for our state and to transfer research into practice that will drive our economy. I know those are important things. These are no small tasks either. But I also encourage you to nurture the future artists, musicians, voters, journalists, teachers, poets, governors. You get the idea. It is about making sure our economy is strong. There's no question about it. But your role across the board, whether it's humanities, liberal arts, sciences, agriculture, it is you're making citizens for the state of Wisconsin. And so I know you know that. You get the idea. Let's make sure that we continue doing that. And lastly, the budget process. In my humble opinion, and I know I have talked to President Rothman about this, chancellors must be active in this debate going forward. Politics are still local. Which of your elected officials are fighting for your campus? How will your state officials work with Joint Finance Committee to get things done? I believe, because I've witnessed it over time, the Board of Regents has kind of flip-flopped on how that is going to be done. I can tell you from my experience, both as governor and also as a board member, Board of Regents member, is when the chancellors are involved, that creates an accountability that just doesn't happen when they're not involved. They are the ones that know the local folks, the local business people, the local people that send their children to their campuses. Those people, those chancellors have to make informed decisions day in and day out. They're the ones that really do have to be involved in this discussion. No matter how much money we have in our surplus in the state of Wisconsin, and it's a lot, there will still be decisions made that you may feel are unfair to your campuses or to the system. But I encourage the chancellors in particular to be actively involved in the politics of determining what resources come to your campus, because you know best. Obviously, the people at the system will be actively involved and you're working together. But my advice is that the chancellors take a lead on this. So thank you for considering doing that. And thank you for considering doing that. And thank you for inviting me back every 4 years. I appreciate coming back and saying hello to the new people and thanking all the veterans that are on this board. So thank you so much.
Thank you again to Governor Evers for this visit today. Very much appreciated. President Rothman, would you like to continue your remarks?
I would. I just wanted to follow up on the two items that were covered by the Education Committee this morning, both the credit for prior learning as well as dual enrollment. We'll hear more about those strategies when Regent Weatherly reports tomorrow, but I just wanted to call to your attention the multiple avenues that we're pursuing to try to make progress on those key strategic goals. And I would like to just publicly acknowledge Regent Weatherly for his pushing us forward and challenging us to think about new things and bringing those in front of the committee, because I thought that was very helpful. Let me just talk a little bit about the Richland campus. And You know that there are some students here today from the Richland campus, and I wanted to acknowledge them, as well as leadership from the county board in Richland County. I had the opportunity to meet with them privately before the session today, and I appreciate their passion. I appreciate their advocacy, and I'm glad that they are here. When I took this position last summer, I knew there would be difficult decisions. And one of those is my recent decision to direct Chancellor Tammy Avetovich to end in-person instruction at UW-Platteville Richland at the Richland campus, effective the beginning of the 2023-2024 academic year. Before I go further, I want to make one thing clear. Our commitment to our critical access mission continues, and the Richland campus is being repurposed to better serve the needs of the community, as well as to maintain our fiduciary responsibility of ensuring that university operations are financially sound. Enrollment this fall at Richland has dropped to 60 degree-seeking students. That is not financially viable, nor do those conditions afford students the college experience that they deserve. Looking ahead, we are prepared to provide a UW presence at the Richland campus, which may include enrichment programs, online reskilling and upskilling instruction for adult learners, and online degree completion courses. In developing the vision for this programming, UW-Platteville expects to work with the Richland County government officials, as well as business and community leaders, to ensure that the UW presence on the campus continues to meet regional needs. It is part of the plan that I have directed the chancellor to work on, and which I know she is committed to completing. I know my decision directly impacts students at the Richland campus, but the enrollment numbers and the strong desire to provide a high-quality college experience for our students with so few on campus left me, unfortunately, with little choice. Students who are currently attending the Richland campus will be offered the opportunity to complete their degrees at UW-Platteville, its Baraboo campus, or other UW system schools. UW-Platteville will develop a plan for the faculty and staff who are employed at the Richland campus as well. I would like to emphasize that this is not a step I have taken lightly. We are constantly evaluating the number of students who enroll, the number who graduate, the pay of our faculty and staff, program offering, student support, and basically everything else. As responsible stewards, we must continue to evaluate circumstances and make adjustments as needed. I know there are questions about whether the other two-year campuses may face similar changes in the future. We recognize that some of our two-year campuses are facing the same type of enrollment challenges that colleges are facing across the country, and we are watching those trends closely. However, we are going to work to ensure that these critical access points throughout the state continue to innovate, to provide education and services that Wisconsinites rely on. And we do have some two-year campuses that I think have started to change the trajectory. So there's some positive news out there as well as we move forward. Let me talk a little bit about some digital learning updates. Keeping the student educational experience front and center is also what drives our interest in enhancing our digital learning experience. As you know, in the spring of 2020, our universities had to abrupt pivot to fully remote learning as a way to help us limit the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Fortunately, we were not starting at ground zero. In the summer of 2017, our universities had already begun implementing new digital learning platforms. This enabled us to transition expeditiously tens of thousands of in-person courses to fully online delivery in a matter of weeks when the need became apparent. Since then, we've learned a lot about the technology we use for teaching and learning, largely thanks to surveys of students administered by our universities. I wanted to share with you 3 key findings from those reviews of what is working well and what is being improved. First, survey results from students show they wanted all course videos to be closed captioned. Captioning was helpful for some students, including those in shared study space. As a result, the default settings in the Cultura video platform were changed to automatically provide machine-generated captions at no cost. Second, we have purchased licensing for a tool that can be used by faculty to check the accessibility of their Canvas courses. And third, students also requested a search function in Canvas to help them better locate files and materials within a course. We plan to integrate such a search tool in early 2023. Overall, we're finding that students appreciate flexibility in course delivery, and it's fair to say that nearly all courses now integrate some sort of digital learning component, even if it's only to provide a place to post syllabi and course assignments. We will continue to survey our students to ensure continual improvements to the learning technology that supports instruction. And now I'd like to draw some attention to some special accomplishments within the UW system. UW-Madison's innovative scholarship program, Bucky's Tuition Promise, is now in its 5th year and has awarded scholarships to nearly 5,000 students during that time period. That's 5,000 Wisconsin resident students who come from families with annual household adjusted incomes of $60,000 or less, who have received guaranteed scholarships and grants to cover tuition and segregated fees at UW-Madison. This year's class of Bucky's Tuition Promise recipients, and there are 937 of them, come from across all of the state, representing 66 out of 72 Wisconsin counties. This was an interesting statistic for me. 74% of recipients live outside the Milwaukee and Madison metro areas. Overall, this year's Bucky's Tuition Promise students make up 1 in 5 of all new freshmen and transfer students from Wisconsin on campus this fall. This kind of opportunity is too good not to share. Last August, we announced the launch of a similar scholarship program at all of our other campuses, namely the Wisconsin Tuition Promise, which is set to start in the fall of 2023. Like Bucky's Tuition Promise, our goal is to extend the broader opportunities and promise of a quality UW education to more Wisconsin students. The success at Madison is encouraging, and we look forward to expanding those benefits around the system. Our universities, of course, are already finding ways to help support students. UW Stevens Point recently received a $1.5 million National Science Foundation grant that will eliminate barriers for low-income students pursuing in-demand careers in the sciences. The STEM grant, that's Scholarships in Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics grant, will provide scholarships to 10 first-year students each fall for the next 3 years to help support their studies to prepare them for STEM-focused careers. And students are receiving vital support in areas outside the classroom as well. At UW Eau Claire, the campus's new hydroponic garden, a student-driven project through the Office of Sustainability, harvested its first crop recently, with all fruits of that labor, in this case lettuce and herbs, being donated to the university's Campus Harvest Food Pantry. The pantry serves hundreds of students in need of food assistance and is a wonderful example of collaboration and students helping students. I also have an update from our meeting, our last meeting, which you may recall was held just before Veterans Day. At that time, Regent Posh shared the news of an upcoming event at UW-Platteville. I'm pleased to report back that the university has now officially dedicated a Vietnam Veterans Memorial honoring 12 UW-Platteville students and alumni who were killed in action in the Vietnam War. Nearly 300 people attended the dedication ceremony, including next of kin and friends of the 12 veterans being honored. Our thanks to UW-Platteville for acknowledging those who made the ultimate sacrifice. One more item from UW-Madison. I'd like to congratulate the campus community on their signing of new head football coach Luke Fickell, the 2021 National Coach of the Year from the University of Cincinnati. As noted by the Badgers Director of Athletics, Chris McIntosh, Luke is, and I quote, a proven winner, recruiter, and developer of players. Equally important, he shares our values. Coach Fickell is focused on giving our student athletes the best opportunities possible, end quote. My congratulations to Chancellor Mnuchin, AD Chris McIntosh, and the entire team at Madison. And we really look forward to cheering on the Badgers at their bowl game later this month as well. Finally, the end of the year is often a very busy time, but it is also a very exciting time, especially for many students in coming weeks. About 10,000 around the system are expected to receive their hard-earned UW degrees. These graduates are the workers, the leaders, and the innovators that the governor was talking about, who will define the economy and culture of this great state moving forward. And the education they received at one of our UW universities has prepared them well. My congratulations to the class of 2022. I wish them all great success. And thank you to the faculty, staff, university communities, and families who supported these students as they progressed through their UW experience. We know that group played a key role in helping those 10,000 students gain success. And with that, that concludes my report. President Walsh, I will turn the floor back to you.
Thank you, President Rothman. We'll now turn our attention to UW Systems 2023 to 2028 strategic plan, which will be presented today for consideration and approval by this board. Over the past several months, we've had regular updates on how this plan has been developed and evolved. And I now call upon President Rothman to take us to the next step.
Thank you very much. I am pleased today to present to the board for consideration and hopefully approval of 5-year strategic plan for the UW system. As you know, we started this planning process back in May. The plan that you have before you today has evolved over that time with input from various stakeholders, including members of this board, the team at UW System Administration, the chancellors and members of their respective teams, members of shared governance, legislators, and the employer community, among others. I would like to take a moment to thank each person who provided feedback. Your input and your questions have made the plan better. The plan you have before you today has been modified most recently based on the input the Regents provided at the November meeting. In addition, we have now finalized the proposed success measures following a process by which we tested those measures to ensure that they were reasonably achievable, while at the same time being aspirational, based on input that we received from each university. In other words, targets were built from the bottom up to make sure that the system-wide targets are in the ballpark. I would particularly like to thank the chancellors and their teams, who, working with Ben Passmore and his team, provided the necessary data in an extremely compressed time frame. And I think extremely compressed might be a euphemism, but we'll go with that for now. Please allow me to share several of the changes we made to the plan since the board meeting in November pursuant to your input. Per region input, we modified what is now in strategy 1, the measure of Pell Grant recipients, changing it from a percentage increase to a numerical one, which now sets as a target an increase from 26,000 Pell eligible students to 35 Pell eligible students at the end of the term of the strategic plan. We have, again, in strategy 1, included an increase now of 12 percentage points in the graduation rates for underrepresented students. In strategy 2, we have inserted a target of increasing the number of adult learners enrolled exclusively in online programs from 5,700 to 10,000. We eliminated a target, again in strategy 2, of adult learners receiving employer-paid tuition because our data, unfortunately, relative to that target, were not as reliable as we would have liked. In strategy 5, at the request of this board, we added a target related to eliminating structural deficits at our universities during the term of the plan. In strategy 6, we eliminated the reference to UWM, that is UW Milwaukee's herd ranking, as we concluded that that ranking is less relevant to UWM in maintaining its R1 status. In strategy 9, we have included specific metrics for improvement in the number of new system graduates who secure employment in Wisconsin post-graduation. As it relates to all of these targets in the plan and based on input we have received, I believe we have established targets that are reasonable, but also aspirational, which is as it should be. We have not set targets that are slam dunks, nor are there necessarily clearly defined pathways as we sit here today to how we're going to reach all of those targeted levels. Rather, we have challenged ourselves to attain goals that will require substantial effort on our part and will require us to be innovative and creative. I believe that is wholly appropriate and in fact critical. The plan before you is premised on the fact that the status quo is not sustainable. The UW system is positioned and has the responsibility to the people of Wisconsin to address some challenging issues. When we met in November, I shared with you data about demographic, wealth distribution, equity, diversity, and inclusion, public perception of higher education, workforce demand, and educational attainment trends impacting the state of Wisconsin. Those trends, which I believe in the aggregate, pose an existential threat to our state's long-term economic viability. As just one measure, it is essential that we produce more graduates of our universities to support the needs of Wisconsin employers, which is why we have set forth a success measure of increasing the number of graduates on an annual basis by over 10% to 41,000 by the end of the 5-year term of the plan. Similarly, we want to enhance the stature of our universities in the field of research and creative activity, including increasing the Herd ranking of Madison to number 6 from its current position at number 8. It may cause you to ask, why are research and creative activities important? They are the core of any university. They are important because they lead to new knowledge and new discoveries that improve the quality of life for our people, propel additional new innovation, as well as drive economic growth. In addition, we want to support the employer community in Wisconsin by providing reskilling and upskilling educational opportunities for their employees. And those are just a few examples of what we aspire to do for our state under the strategic plan, all of which are consistent with our living that noble vision of the Wisconsin idea. The achievement of our goals is undoubtedly dependent on a lot of hard work on our part, to which we are committed. We also need to secure resources to invest in our plan. Some of those resources may come from internal prioritization and cost efficiencies, but we will also need support from other sources, including from the state of Wisconsin. We need those resources to achieve our aspirational targets, which we believe will enhance the lives of our fellow Wisconsinites. It is that simple. I know you have all had a chance to review the plan in detail on several occasions. So rather than going through a summary of the plan, I would welcome any questions or comments that you may have. But before we get to the questions and comments, I have one other topic I'd like to cover. Assuming the Regents approve the plan today, we will complete assembling work plans focused on the specific steps at the system level that are necessary to implement our strategies and appoint accountable leaders to start our journey toward achievement of our success measures. I plan to report to the board on a routine basis about the steps we are implementing and our progress toward our goals moving forward. So with that, let me open the floor for questions and comments, if that's okay, Regent President.
Absolutely. Questions or comments for President Rossman? Yes, Regent Cologne.
Thank you, Regent Walsh. Thank you, President Rossman. When you first started, there were several of us board members that met with you and wanted more resources allocated to the city of Milwaukee. And you mentioned that you needed a little time and you wanted to focus that attention through the strategic plan, really to maintain our research one status, to address the challenges and opportunities that are unique to Milwaukee, and also to demonstrate that we're real about equity, diversity, and inclusion. So my question is, how is Milwaukee prioritized in this plan? And can you monetize that if you have an answer to that?
I think Regent Cologne, if you look in the success measures, there are two different success measures. One is UWM increasing its research spend by 15% and maintaining and strengthening its R1 status. So I think it's there. I think it's also there in closing gaps. There are a number of different instances in terms of the recruitment, persistence and graduation of those from underrepresented groups. And I think Milwaukee plays a key role in all of that. And I think the challenge for us is when I said in my opening remarks that there were some not yet clearly defined paths of how we're going to get there. I think that's going to be one of them that we're going to have to work through. It's a question of making sure we find the resources to get that done. Sitting here today, do I say we have them? I don't think I can say that we have them, but I think that's one of the goals that we have set for ourselves. So it's up to us to figure out how we get it done. But I think that will also take enhanced support from the state of Wisconsin. I think that's part of it in terms of where we find those additional resources.
Other questions or comments from Regents? Is that your hand up, Regent Rye?
No.
Okay, sorry.
I bugged Jay enough the last meeting. I think I'm good.
Okay, okay. Regent Atwell, is your hand up?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you guys
Yes,
hear
we
me?
can. Yes.
Great.
We can't see
Thank
you,
you.
but we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, seeing me is overrated, but maybe there I
There
am.
you are.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I want to start by thanking President Rothman and the chancellors, the system staff, everybody who worked on the plan. And believe it or not, I'm kind of a last minute guy, so I haven't totally decided how I'm going to vote here. But if we were voting at this moment, I would abstain. And I want to take a few minutes to explain why. And I want to clarify that an abstention is not a no, which means I'm not rejecting the effort and the work that the document represents. It also means I'm not voting yes, primarily because I believe the plan falls far short of a response to the critical situation we find ourselves in. And I have argued, I think, consistently for years, actually, in private conversations, public discussion, various documents and memos that I've sent to now 3 system presidents for a more aggressive strategic planning process to begin at the Regents level. I think what's lacking in the current process, while a lot of the work is good, I'm actually very pleased with what's been accomplished given how the process began and how it proceeded. There is progress made. But I think that a better process would have been for the governing board to set the parameters of the process. That is, to set broad expectations for what is to be accomplished through the process. I know we've had an opportunity to provide input, but I think it would have been more helpful to the chancellors and to the system if we just set forth specific things that we insist must be addressed. Why do I think a more aggressive plan was and remains necessary? And perhaps this can form the bedrock for it. Some of this may seem redundant, but I hope you'll be able to listen and get some value out of it. Higher education is in deep turmoil in general. We could call it digital disruption, or we could find digital opportunity. Broad economic pressures, and most importantly, the deep social, political, and all different kinds of divisions that have taken root across the country, and in particular in our state, about the nature and the purpose of higher ed. And if that's the state of higher ed, the UW system is facing all of the problems, some of which were alluded to in the draft. The demographics are very challenging and very difficult to change. And with respect to the governor, I don't believe UW makes citizens. If anyone makes citizens, it's parents. Probably over half of us in the state believe actually it's parents in cooperation with God. And it's the parents who give birth to and raise the students in cooperation with lots and lots of people and institutions in the community. And I think it's a mistake for the university to appropriate to itself a greater role in the formation of people, then I guess I'd say it, in some sense, it's kind of disrespectful to all the other people and institutions that contribute to a healthy culture in Wisconsin. We have a sprawling and aging infrastructure. I haven't done enough research to find out what they thought the population of the state of Wisconsin would be in 1970 when the system was created, but I was educated during that period, and I think we were all taught to believe there was a population explosion that would occur in Wisconsin. And as we stand today, the population is stabilizing, and with the exception of a few counties, aging. A really important issue is the faculty and the staff we depend on to do the work that we know is so important. And I don't want anyone to think that I don't value or know how important the work of education is. Our faculty and staff were hardly adequately paid before COVID, and they've experienced roughly 25% cumulative decline in their purchasing power over the last 3 years. And cumulative effect, I'm saying. And we're kind of congratulating ourselves on putting forth a 4% increase in the upcoming fiscal 24 budget. The work that they do is very important. We say it over and over again, but it doesn't seem to be reflected in our pay practices. And I don't see how the current plan addresses that. And that's both an equity and an efficiency issue. I think that any strategic plan needs to take a deep look at the competitive environment it operates in, specifically identify the competition that we face as a system and that each institution faces within the system. Know who your competitor is, evaluate their strengths and weaknesses. And I don't see that in the report yet, and I've not heard a lot of, I've heard only the most general discussion about it. And then, which brings me to the topic of internal competition. One of the things that holds us back from that holds me back from advocating for a much more aggressive investment in our system is the fact that our campuses appear to be doing more and more of the same things and competing more and more with each other. And one of the problems with starting the process of strategy at a chancellor level is I hardly see how they can come up with solutions to disarm the internal competition and create specialization, let alone establish prioritization of whether we should invest more heavily in Milwaukee, as Regent Cologne just talked about, or various other campuses around the state. And then, as the governor pointed out, and I think it's just a fact, the state of Wisconsin has the resources. We can invest in the future of our system. What we lack, I believe, is internally to look more deeply at the critical data and issues that we face within each institution and as a system in general. I say this because I have firsthand experience over my 5.5 years as a regent trying to get the system to generate information that would be really useful for everybody to understand in advance before we have to make a decision like Richland County. I think I've tried to get information that I've not been able to get. And I think that suggests to me that we are having trouble really looking in the mirror and starting with a deep level of self-reflection about where we can allocate our resources and how we might allocate them differently. I can't understand how the chancellors as a group could do anything more than argue for more for all of them to be allocated, on the basis of historical means. So I don't see how we can prioritize. So I think prioritization is kind of what I just referenced to. It's sticky stuff. And I don't know how we approach it. But I think it's highly unlikely that it's efficient and optimal and best serves the needs of the state to continue simply to invest in the existing architecture based on the same allocations that we always have. Scary topic. And the governor also in his remarks referenced our independence. And we are independent, but we're not sovereign. And personally, I think there's plenty of emphasis on independence in our culture and insufficient emphasis on interdependence and what it really takes to break down barriers, create trust, listen, communicate, disarm conflict, and move forward with a collective action. There's more to this than words. And I do want to say one other thing about salaries for our faculty and our staff. Salaries in general. We don't seem to have a problem marking salaries to market for higher level executives, the people we recruit at the top of the org chart. And we don't seem to have a problem marking to market on athletic people that we need. But we're having trouble addressing what goes on with the rest of our people who constitute the vast majority of them. So I would like to see, maybe I'm an idealist. I hope people don't think I'm just a crab. I'm trying to be serious about what we face, and I'm trying to be hopeful about what we can do together. And I'm not claiming that I have all the answers. I have proposed ideas. I've talked about them openly. I've listened to criticism about that. But I think the state, and I think the university system, most of all the students we serve and the people that benefit from the work that we do, I don't know where we're going to get to a better understanding about all of this if it doesn't come out of this board. I don't know where the citizens can go. And I'm not going to totally blame the politicians for being so divided. I think they represent the divisions in the state and perhaps contribute to the aggravating the divisions that are there. But I would like to see us go deeper. I'd like to see us go quicker to the fundamental strategic issues, and I'm fearful that despite all this good work, we're not getting at the heart of the matter. We're not really facing our demons. And we're not looking at the men and women in the mirror sometimes who either by action or omission aren't doing what we need to do in the interest of the state and all the people who live and work here. So with that, with those remarks, I plan to listen to what everyone else has to say. And if you don't mind me being waffly, I will decide how I'm going to vote when we're ready to vote. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Regent Atwell.
With your permission, Regent Atwell, let me just share a couple thoughts with you. I tried to make notes as you were going through. And first of all, thank you for your very thoughtful comments. And you have been helpful as we've gone through this process. I'd just like to point out, I guess, a couple of things for your consideration. One would be certainly, I don't think the plan suggests, and if you believe it does, I would apologize for that. It's the UW system that's going to solve all of the other issues. There are issues of families and issues of other institutions throughout society that are important to develop people as they move forward. I think we play a role in that, but we are certainly not the be all and end all as we develop and help people changing the trajectory of their lives. On the demographics point that you made, I think you're absolutely right. And I think when we say we're going to shoot to graduate 10% more in 5 years, we're going to have to deal with some of those demographic issues in the state. And quite frankly, I don't think we're necessarily going to do it organically because we're going to have to be creative in terms of attracting people to the state and have them stick here. As I mentioned in November, when you look at the demographics of the state with 25% of our population 60 or older, and with that percentage projected to grow moving forward, you know where the birth rates are in the state. They have been declining since the Great Recession. They have started to tick up a little bit, but not a lot. That's not gonna work. We're gonna have to figure out some things that I think are pretty revolutionary, whether it's attracting more people into the state by providing incentives for people to come here to go to school and then stay here. Because if we don't do that, we are not going to have the nurses and the physicians and the engineers and the data scientists and the teachers and so forth that we're going to need to support this state, and Wisconsin will suffer if we can't do that. So I think that goal alone and saying we're going to increase our number of graduates by 10%, I think is aspirational to say the least, but I think absolutely critical. As we think about faculty and staff compensation, we do have as a metric in the plan, as you know, and you and I have talked about this, about getting people to a competitive level. And I appreciate that in the current pay plan, we've made a request, and we have to balance that, quite frankly, against the university's ability to pick up their respective portion of it. And again, there's an area where we need to free up more financial resource, I believe, to make it work. You mentioned campuses competing. Actually, you know, I may have come into this job thinking that. I have to tell you, after having spent some time with the chancellors, and we have not yet shared with you, and we owe that to you yet, the amount of collaboration that goes on among the universities, including sharing of administrative staff personnel, sharing and collaborating around delivery of curriculum. It really is impressive. And I appreciate that at some level, each of the universities does compete for students. That's reality. But the level of collaboration and work that occurs among the chancellors, I think has really impressed me as I've gone through this process. And I think if you look at the prioritization, and it's a fair point, and it's always something a plan ought to help you identify. If I were to prioritize the three things that I think are in the plan that I think drive it, one would be around generating that 41,000 graduates a year. Two, it would be around the social mobility point, that is recruiting, retaining, and graduating more students from underrepresented groups. We're not going to get to the 41,000 if we don't do that. But I think it's also critical that we close the wealth gap, that continued divide in the wealth gap, and the expansion of that gap. Because I think not only is that have all kinds of different ramifications to the state, I don't think we can continue to afford it, both economically or quite frankly, socially any longer. Because I think we're seeing the bonds of our social ties get frayed. I think that's one of the reasons. I think that the plan helps do that, is focused on achieving that. And I think that is the second prioritization. And the third prioritization to me is around research and creative activity. If you were to think about the three things in the plan that kind of drive it, and that again goes to the core of what the universities do. It's the development and the creation of new knowledge and new experiences. It's what the UW system has been known for forever. And I think we need to continue to focus our investment in that area, because it's not just the economic impact. It is just the creation of new knowledge in and of itself is a good thing. One of the interesting things I've learned going through this process is how important that creation of new knowledge is to the creation of new knowledge down the line. And I think it reflects the iterative nature of research and creative activity, and the importance of learning and failing, but learning from your failures and continuing to build on that. So in terms of prioritization, those would be the ones that I would look at in terms of what is driving the plan. But again, I appreciate your comments, and I know they are heartfelt, so thank you.
All right, thank you, President Rothman. Regent Underly.
Thank you very much, Regent President Walsh. Hope you can all hear me. I wanted to start by saying that I also look forward to the positive impact that the strategic plan will have on the lives of Wisconsin students, such as the important outcomes addressing access and affordability, as well as time to graduation. I agree with Regent Atwell on many of his points, such as their competitiveness, addressing some of the historic needs, for example, and the fact that we have the resources at the state level to invest in education. I feel we could have gone deeper as well and addressed some of the hard stuff that we've been dealing with historically. I too would have liked to see more engagement with the Regents in the plan's development, as well as with other stakeholders, including our students and faculty. I feel, for example, maybe it's because I'm on the capital planning and budget that, the facilities that we have system-wide were not as well addressed in this plan, among other things, such as the recruitment and retention of faculty and staff and salaries. I look forward to future conversations with the system president on how we can address more K-12 connections and opportunities, including those that we already have in system administration, like the math initiative or freshwater sciences initiative. And I know we've touched on this already in previous meetings, but for example, the creation of a system-wide plan for recruitment and retention of K-12 teachers, particularly in special education and content areas in high schools, that could lead to more dual credit opportunities in rural areas of the state. Hoping that President Rothman can address how this plan looks at increasing the impact of system graduates as educators in our schools, particularly in rural areas, and the pathways of support for rural Wisconsin students and future UW system graduates. And I'm also hopeful that we can do this together. We can do a lot of things together as the UW system, the state of Wisconsin, and the citizens of this state, so that we can do everything that we can to serve the students and the future generations. So thank you.
Regent Menedee.
Thank you. Well, I have no problem supporting this plan. This plan started last spring, and it was a shared governance approach. It wasn't the regents deciding what the strategic plan should be and then telling everybody else that this is what we're going to do. This was a group of concerned people that came together and talked about these ideas, the core values, the objectives, and the strategies. Now, this is just an overview. This isn't going to address every single issue that you can think of, because we have thousands of them in this system. And it's not a plan to fix everything that's wrong with the system or with the state or with the country. It's simply a way for us to plan on how we're going to proceed in the future. And it's a good plan. And it's a plan that was thought of by the chancellors, who in large part are the ones that have to implement these things, and gave us a lot of good direction, a lot of hours, a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, a lot of debates were had before we finalized the strategic plan. Now, as far as the regents having input, I remember this being sent to us numerous times. I remember us being asked to comment. I remember us being given the opportunity to ask questions at open meetings. And I know we did that numerous times, and particularly the last meeting where we had a lot of suggestions, which President Rothman indicated were implemented and added to the plan. So we did have that opportunity. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we had an opportunity to comment. We had an opportunity to be involved. Lots of things have gone on to result in this plan. It's shared governance at its finest, and I have no problem supporting it. I think that's the easy part. Hard part's going to be us as regents to talk to our representatives, to talk to them about the values that we have and how we need them implemented. A fine example of that was the Education Committee today. Regent Weatherly had a senator and a representative come in, and we talked about some things that were important to students and would make things more available for them in rural areas, and then by way of partnership and high school students taking classes, college classes, to get credit for them before they graduate. And they were very impressed and very excited about wanting to help us. So we've got to be more open to having them come to our discussions, to invite them to sit here with us and hear us discuss these things and talk about them and get their input so that they can help us achieve these core values and these goals. It's time for us to stop living in a bubble. It's time for us to start inviting people from down the street here to talk to us and us to listen to them. And I know that once we start that conversation, we'll be able to implement and these strategies to achieve our objectives and our core values would be at the heart of all of that. So I have absolutely no problems voting yes for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Benedict's. Yes, Regent Jones.
Thank you very much. I think that Buttersley and Regent Atwell's comments are, as always, I mean, deeply thoughtful and I think vitally important for us to take them to heart. That said, I completely support the adoption of this strategic plan as an excellent step forward. But I would advise all of us, including myself, to keep Bob and Jill's comments front of mind as we execute this 5-year strategy, because we will need to be agile. We will need to course correct. There are going to be things that we did not think about that come up. But with that said, I totally support the plan.
Thank you. Comments or questions from other regions? I would like to take just a moment to put some historical perspective on where this plan and the way it looks and the way it was developed has differed from what has gone on in the past at the UW system level. There are several regents here today who predate my time on the board, but when I came on board in 2019, there was a 5-year-old plan expiring in 2020, which didn't have measurables as far as I know. It wasn't energetically developed with our chancellors and our campuses. And one thing I think when we hired President Rothman, we said, we want you to treat our campuses and our chancellors as the incredible resource they are. And this plan needs to develop with their guidance and help. And then also the guidance of shared governance. We rely on them to communicate with their folks. This is a completely different approach than the one that had been used in the past. This is a true strategic plan in the sense that we actually have measurables. We actually have goals. Now, are we using those goals as a hammer in case somebody doesn't meet them? The right response for a system is to say, if this campus didn't meet this goal, what do you need to help us get you there? So it's a living, developing plan. And I think Regent Jones brings up a very great point. This isn't the 10 Commandments, in the stone. This is a living document that requires all of our responsibility, all of our ability to persuade and stay in contact with the people at our campuses who are driving the work at their campuses. And I would never sit here and say that it was all extremely smooth. When you have a system that hasn't asked the chancellors where you fit into the strategic plan, I mean, that's a big jump. It's a big leap. And they took it fearlessly. They held our feet to the fire. And I give them a ton of credit for this, as well as President Rothman. This was one of the things we asked him to do when we came in. Now, is it a perfect document? Probably not. And as time goes on, we're going to face those pieces that we have to adjust to. But those values, those core goals are going to be there. Perhaps what's underneath them is going to have to change. So any other? Yes, Regent Potts.
Thank you, President Walsh. I spoke out when we developed the strategic plan and whether it was student focused. And I think it is. The very first words on the strategic plan deals with why we're here as students. I also believe that if it was a strategic plan process, that there was pretty active dialogue and participation in arriving where we are with this document. And so that gives me comfort for not being there. But there are two terms that I hope I don't hear as we start to implement. One is best practice. Best practice to me is status quo. Why don't we want to set the standard rather than meet the standard? And I hope that this strategic process will do this. The other thing is peer comparables. Peer comparables is again status quo. I think we need to review and critically look at our practices, our processes, our staffing, our priorities, and be realistic and honest. is how that really was necessary or what is necessary to carry out implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I think we are, may I have I think I need a motion to adopt the resolution 8, adopting the UW Systems proposed strategic plan for 2023 to 2028. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I would like to call for a roll call vote on this matter, Madam Secretary.
Regent President Walsh,
Yes.
Regent Vice President Bogus,
Yes.
Regent Adams,
Yes.
Regent Atwell,
Abstain.
Regent Bechtel, Regent Cologne,
Yes.
Regent Jones,
Yes.
Regent Menedez,
Yes.
Regent Miller,
Yes.
Regent Posh,
Yes.
Regent Peterson,
Yes.
Regent Rye,
Yes.
Regent Staton, Regent Tucker.
Yes.
I think that was a yes. That was great. Regent Underly,
Yes.
Regent Walks,
Aye. Yes.
Regent Weatherly.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much for your very thoughtful comments, particularly to Regent Atwell and Regent Underly joining us virtually. Very much appreciated. And our work now turns to the implementation of this plan hand in hand with our campuses and our chancellors. Thank you again for your very hard work on this particular effort. All right, that concludes our open session for today. Vice President Bogus, will you please read the motion to move into closed session?
I move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to A, consider the acceptance of a confidential gift, the naming of a facility and a school at UW Stevens Point as permitted by Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, Wisconsin statutes. B, consider pay plan compensation adjustments for the UW system chancellors as permitted by Section 1985, Section 1, Section C. How come no one's listening? Wisconsin statutes. Consider a recommendation for the employment of executive director and corporate secretary, office of the Board of Regents is permitted by Section 1985, Parent 1, Parent C, and Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Rye. Megan, please call the roll.
Regent President Walsh.
Yes.
Regent Vice President Bogus.
Yes.
Regent Adams. Regent Atwell.
Yes.
Regent Bechtel. Regent Cologne. Regent Jones. Regent Menedez. Regent Miller. Regent Posh. Regent Peterson. Regent Rye. Regent Staton. Regent Tucker. Yes.
Any
Regent
regents
Underly?
who need to use the restroom, you might want to step out now. Okay, I'm sorry.
Regent Walks. Regent Weatherly.
Yes.